Donald Trump's tour in Asia, he met with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. And interestingly enough, he seemed to be incredibly chummy with Duterte, who has been a controversial figure considering the fact that he has been very supportive and has encouraged extrajudicial killings of individuals who are addicted to drugs. Now, the Philippines have an issue with drug addiction. So does the United States, and the approach here in the United States has been to, stop criminalizing people who are addicted to painkillers and heroin and get them the help that they need to recover. In the Philippines, it's a completely different story. Thousands of people have been killed in extrajudicial killings, some by police officers, others by vigilantes, and it has been disastrous because there's no due process in these cases. Now, Trump, though, has praised Duterte for his organization of the summits, saying that he handled them beautifully. He also said, we had a great relationship. This has been very successful. Trump also said that he had enjoyed being here, meaning with Duterte in the Philippines. Now, there's another part of their meeting that is a little disturbing. Both Duterte and Trump have a deep disdain for the media. And so as reporters were being escorted out of the room, one asked if Trump would raise the issue of human rights, to which Duterte jokingly called the media spies. At that point, both laughed, but neither answered the question.
Yeah, so there's a number of issues here. First, on the so-called drug war that Duterte is running, about 100,000 people have been killed, and you think like, oh, it's gang warfare and stuff, and sure, I'm sure that that's some part of it, but mainly it's actually the cops doing the killing. And so Amnesty International accuses the police of shooting defenseless people. Not only that, the police paying assassins to murder not drug dealers, but addicts.
Yeah, people who are addicted to drugs. And as again, we're experiencing here in the United States, this is something that should be met with decriminalization and with rehabilitation, because people get addicted to drugs for all sorts of reasons. They're not bad people because they're addicted to drugs. This is terrible.
So now, look, the US doesn't have completely clean hands by a long shot. We're the people who started the war on drugs in the first place, and it's been an absolute debacle. And of course, now we're talking about rehabilitation because it's affecting wider cross-section of Americans. Back when it was mainly black people they were locking up, then they weren't talking about as a health issue. They were talking about, oh, we're gonna throw them away. So we got plenty of skeletons in our closet, no question about that. But Duterte is definitely a different level. Just last year, he said that we should kill the 3 million addicts in the Philippines.
I actually
kill them, murder them, the addicts.
I have his exact quote, which is shocking. He said, he'd be happy to slaughter 3 million addicts, slaughter them. And he's made a number of these comments, and it emboldens the vigilantes, it emboldens the cops. And even if someone thinks, no, drug addicts should be criminalized, well, what about due process? What about a trial? Extrajudicial killings imply that there is no trial, there is no day in court, there's nothing. You can be accused, and as soon as you're accused, because you're emboldened by the leader of the country, you can go out and just kill someone for being addicted to drugs or allegedly addicted to drugs. You can just go out there and kill someone you don't like and accuse them of being addicted to drugs.
Of course, that's why the killing is absolutely out of control in the Philippines. And so now, Trump, while on the campaign trail, pretended to care about the opioid problem in America. And he pretended to empathize with the families of those who were addicted. Now he's going and embracing a guy who says we should kill anyone who's addicted to any kind of drug. So if your family's been affected by the disaster in this country that opioids have wreaked, and you thought Trump was gonna help you, he just embraced a guy who says your family member should be murdered. And so Duterte just last week in another Asian summit in Vietnam bragged about how he personally killed someone when he was 16 years old.
He said at the age of 16, I already killed someone, a real person, a rumble, a stabbing. I was just 16 years old. It was just over a look. So he's bragging about murdering people. And it's just so fascinating to me to see who Trump shows admiration for. people who have this dictatorial streak, people like Duterte, people like, Vladimir Putin, who, viciously go after their opponents, in some cases murdering their opponents. I mean, why is it that Trump has this deep admiration for them, but when it comes to other world leaders like Angela Merkel, he's just vicious toward them? It's fascinating to me. I don't know.
And then finally on the issue of the press, so Duterte calls them spies, and if you don't know Duterte's history, you might think, okay, whatever, he doesn't like the press. A lot of Republicans don't like the press because they actually cover facts from time to time. But understand that there's a difference even between Trump and Duterte. Trump has said it's frankly disgusting the press is able to write whatever it wants to write, because Trump is a person who's never read the US Constitution. That is an absolute guarantee in the Constitution, but he doesn't care, he's a wannabe dictator. But Duterte has said, just because you're a journalist, you are not exempted from assassination if you're a son of a bitch. Freedom of expression cannot help you if you have done something wrong. So this is a guy who has encouraged the assassination of journalists. So when he says, all of you people in the press are spies, it is not a laughing matter. The Philippines now unfortunately ranks as the third worst country for killing of journalists, only behind Syria and Iraq, and those journalists died in war zones. Duterte has created the war zone where he's encouraging the assassination of his critics in the press.
Right.
And not character assassination, actual murder assassination. So it is not remotely a laughing matter. If you say Trump doesn't know that because he's an idiot, okay, I guess that's your big defense. My president that I like doesn't do any homework, is a moron, doesn't know who he's yucking it up with, and saying he's a wonderful person. Every part of Trump is, again, with Putin, Duterte, just loves the strongmen who are dictators who murder political opponents and the press, and thinks it's a wonderful thing to compliment them over and over and laugh with them. And by the way, after the laughing was done, Duterte said, "I'm not joking," and pointed to the press and said, "You are, like you are spies." He's not joking, he's called for their murder. And Trump's like, this is great, man, why can't I do this? Support independent media, come join us at the Young Turks, tytnetwork.com/join.